3 sinister beach house stories revealed. Haunting tales of the cursed, hidden dangers awaiting. Rachel stepped into the beach house, her breath catching in her throat. The quaint charm of the place was a thin veil over something darker, something that whispered in the breeze like dread itself. She shook it off. This was supposed to be a fresh start, a summer of bonding with her son, Jake. Little did she know, this house was draped in shadows, and they were itching to unfurl as they unpacked. The sun poured through the windows, banishing the chill that clung to her spine. "Isn't this great, Mom?" Jake called from the porch, but Rachel's smile faded the moment she spotted the crude symbols carved into the weathered wood beneath his feet. Fear grazed her skin like ice. "Those are weird," Jake remarked, gazing at the mysterious markings. Rachel waved it away. "Just some old graffiti. Let us focus on having fun." The locals eyed them from afar, their whispered warnings curling around her like smoke. "You'll see," one woman had said, her face a mask of regret. "The house, it's got a history." Rachel rolled her eyes. Who believes in old wives' tales? They wanted to heal, not get wrapped up in urban legends. Secretly, though, anxiety knotted in her gut. Night fell, painting the beach house in shadows. The waves crashed violently against the shore, a chaotic lullaby that filled the air with unrest. Laughter faded, and Rachel felt every creak of the floorboards echo like a scream in the silence. Then, the sheriff appeared, friendly but unsettling. "Nice place you got here," he said with too much enthusiasm, but Rachel noticed the way his eyes darted toward the water, as if watching for something lurking just beneath the surface. "Everything okay?" she managed to choke out, anxiety swelling in her throat. The sheriff's smile strained as he spoke about the history of missing kids and families lost to the sea, though he quickly redirected to cheerful chatter. "Must be nice to get away." It raised the hair on the back of her neck. "Yeah, just perfect," she replied, forcing a smile that wavered. Fear morphed into terror when Jake disappeared into the woods behind the house, drawn by the thrill of adventure. A wave of panic crashed over Rachel, her heart thudding in her chest. The shadows swallowed him whole, and the air thickened with whispers that seemed to beckon her deeper. The town felt alive, alive with unseen eyes. "Jake!" she screamed, her voice a wail that bounced off the trees, but all she got in return was silence suffocating and terrible. Her phone buzzed, but the signal fizzled into nothingness. Tendrils of panic twisted tighter around her throat as shivers skated down her back. The ground beneath her felt like a nightmare, filled with lost souls. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Rachel burst through the underbrush, and there he was. Jake! She wrapped her arms around him, but as they hugged, a chill swept through her. Something was different about him. His eyes glimmered in the dim light like deep pools hiding something unspeakable. An echo of the house's dark history seemed to pulse between them, weaving invisible threads that threatened to pull them back. As they raced towards the house, the wind howled ominously, shadows flickering at the windows like the ghosts of lost families. Had they stepped into a trap? Rachel's instincts screamed at her. This was no ordinary summer getaway. The beach house held darkness in its walls, and no amount of sunshine could drown it out. They needed to leave, but the feeling that something was watching, waiting, lingered long after they stepped inside, leaving her heart pounding in her chest. What had the house done to Jake? What awaited them in this seemingly sunny sanctuary? Rachel slammed the door behind them, panting, heart racing. She pulled Jake close, scanning his face for any hint of what had transpired in the woods. The shadows danced in the dim light of the beach house, twisting into ominous shapes along the walls. "What happened out there?" she demanded, her voice trembling. Jake shrugged, but his eyes flickered with an unsettling depth. "I don't know, Mom. It was just quiet." I thought I heard something, but I couldn't find it, he replied, his voice oddly flat. Rachel's stomach turned. This wasn't her Jake, not completely. She felt an inexplicable fear settle like lead in her gut. Let us just watch some TV. Okay? She suggested, trying to mask her panic. The words were brittle, cracking under the weight of her dread. They found the old TV, dust-covered and antiquated. She flipped it on, hoping the flickering screen would drown out the darkness creeping at the edges of her sanity. Look, there's a movie about a beach house, Jake said, eyes glued to the screen. But Rachel's attention drifted. The air seemed thicker, charged with a tension that prickled her skin. She could feel it, the house was alive, watching them. The sound of the waves crashed violently against the shore outside, each crash more insistent, like a heartbeat getting louder. A distant murmur reached her ears, incoherent whispers floating in from the dark. Jake, do you hear that? Hear what? He looked puzzled, his innocence further unsettling her. The film played on, but Rachel couldn't focus. She got up and paced. Every room seemed to breathe around her. Something's off. I need to check the windows, she muttered. Shoving her fears aside, she approached the window. The shadows flickered outside, a swirling mass on the sand. She squinted, dread creeping up her spine as she saw figures darting along the water's edge, faint, translucent forms playing in the surf. Were they children? Her breath hitched. Jake, she whispered, turning back to her son. But he was fixated on the screen, the images playing in a disturbing sequence. Jake! He blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream. What? The kids outside. Do you see them? He shrugged and turned back to the TV, as if he hadn't heard her. Rachel felt an electric jolt of panic. What had happened to her son? You shouldn't look at them, she shouted, but quickly covered her mouth. The whispers from outdoors rose in a fierce gust, swirling through the cracks, wrapping around her like cold fingers. The noise was almost calling to her. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging them into near darkness. She felt a pull from the house, a terrible allure that beckoned her deeper into its core. Stay by me, Jake, Rachel warned, feeling her heart pound faster. Then silence. The TV cut out, its screen flickering into blackness. Terror gripped her. What the hell? The sound of laughter echoed from the darkness outside. It was childlike, shrill, twisted with malice. Jake's eyes widened, losing all semblance of the boy she loved. She moved back, her pulse quickening, the air stifling around her. Mom, he started, but there was no certainty in his voice. Rachel felt the walls closing in, the floors shifting beneath her feet. The shadows pressed closer, warping into figures, children with hollow eyes and grinning mouths stretched impossibly wide. They were moving toward her, advancing like a tide. And then everything went still. Jake? She called softly, unsure of what she defined. He turned, staring into a dark corner of the room, a grin creeping across his lips that froze the blood in her veins. They want us to play, Mom, he said, his voice chillingly devoid of fear. Rachel felt her heart stop. She was trapped in a house, haunted by whispers and shadows, and her son was slipping away into the dark. Whatever lingered in that cursed beach house was reaching out, threatening to take him and her forever. What would she do next? Would she follow him into the abyss, or fight to pull him back before the house consumed them whole? The oppressive air thickened with anxious uncertainty as she stood at the precipice of dread, contemplating the choice that could seal their fate. Rachel's breath came in ragged gasps as she stared at Jake. The cheerful boy she knew had vanished, replaced by someone or something else. Shadows shifted in the corners of the dimly lit room, whispering secrets she dared not comprehend. They want us to play, the words wrapped around her mind like barbed wire, tightening her chest with every heartbeat. What kind of game did they want? Felt wrong to even think of it. The laughter from outside swelled, a chorus of little voices rising and falling like a tide of madness. Jake, she shouted, forcing herself to step closer, to reach for him. Listen to me. We can't play with them. But Jake's wide eyes were fixated beyond her, as if he was peering through the veil that separated their world from the house's buried horrors. "They've been waiting a long time, Mom. Don't you hear them? Don't you want to play?" His smile split his face unnaturally, a flash of white teeth that only fueled her fear. "No, no, we're not playing anything," she hissed, clenching her fists at her sides to prevent herself from backing away. She didn't want to show weakness. Not now. Just then, a thump echoed through the house. It resonated from the back, deep in the bowels of the structure. It sounded heavy and deliberate, like footsteps making their way toward her. The windows rattled as if something outside was trying to break in. Rachel's heart raced. "Stay here, Jake." Before he could respond, she dashed down the dark corridor, her heart drumming in her ears. The air was thick with tension, cloying and damp like a summer storm. As she moved past the doorways, shadows twisted and curled. She glimpsed brief outlines of children in the corners, their gaunt faces peering from the darkness. Were they real, or figments of her shattered mind? The older parts of the house creaked beneath her feet, as if the building itself was alive, anticipating her every move. Rachel paused at the back door and pressed her ear against the cold wood. Silence. What lay beyond? Was it the same deep night she had fought her way from earlier, or something worse? Something that wanted to pull them back into its embrace. Gathering her courage, she flung the door open. It banged against the exterior wall. The night air spilled into the house, filled with the scent of sea salt and something rancid. Out in the distance, the figures by the water danced and shouted, their expressions frozen in glee that sent ice through her veins. "Jake!" she called again, her voice trembling. He needed her. They were still connected somehow. The darkness beckoned him, and she couldn't let him go. She turned back. The hallway leading to the living room was dark, every inch of it a thick void waiting to swallow her whole. The laughter was louder now. It was right on top of her, a tide surging, threatening to lift her off her feet. Rushing back to the living room, she stumbled over a discarded toy that hadn't been there before. Her breath caught as she looked down. Tiny, weathered figures of children, their faces etched with horrified expressions she recognized too well. They were like the ones outside, the ones dancing in the surf. "No, no," she whispered, dread pooling in her gut as she glanced up. Jake was standing there, illuminated by the faint light from the television screen. His head tilted as if listening to an invisible conductor. The door closed of its own accord behind her. "Mom, it's fun," he urged, his voice echoing with that same chilling glee. "Don't you want to join us? They won't let you go. You have to play." Rachel squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down her cheeks. This wasn't her son, not anymore. He was somewhere far away, trapped and replaced by whatever dark entity lurked within the house, feeding on fear and despair. Each heartbeat echoed louder, pounding her senses, warping her reality. She felt things brush past her, cold fingers snaking through her hair and holding her tight. As she opened her eyes, Rachel was ready to pull Jake back, ready to scream against whatever haunted their lives. But he was already moving closer to the door that had opened again, its threshold shimmering with shadows, and the laughter grew into an agonizing roar. "Mom, they're waiting." She felt time stretch, as if the air itself held its breath. She could run, slam the door, but what about Jake? Could she really leave him behind? As the shadows swirled around her, clinging to her skin, Rachel fought against the rising tide of dread. With a final, desperate measure, she reached out to her son. Could there still be a spark of the boy she loved in him? "I love you, Jake," she screamed through the spiraling chaos. "We can fight them, together." But his eyes, cold as glass, glinted in the dark. The house groaned, and the laughter screamed in harmony, blending into a nightmarish symphony. As Rachel's shaking hand reached out, the darkness surged around her, pulling her deeper into its abyss, and she had to wonder, was escape ever an option? What awaited them in that hellish embrace? Would she hold on, or let go into the chilling depths? The laughter erupted into a cacophony, flinging itself around the room as if mocking Rachel's desperate plea. Shadows thickened and twisted, coiling like serpents, their shapes distorting with every heartbeat. She recoiled, instinct kicking in as panic clawed at her throat. But Jake remained steadfast, his feet planted firmly against the floor, the doorway a portal to something unearthly. Jake! Terror laced her voice, pulling her closer to the precipice of madness. Come back! He turned, his face an unsettling mask. Mom! Don't you want to play? Don't you want to join us? The laughter flared again, as if the unseen children were pulling at the very fabric of her sanity. The room felt smaller, squeezing the air from her lungs. In that moment, Rachel felt the tendrils of darkness stroke her skin, cold and tingling, sapping her strength. She clutched at her chest, breathless, and forced herself to look deeper into her son's eyes, searching for any trace of the boy who once loved superheroes and ice cream. All she found was an abyss staring back, dark and yawning. No! She screamed, voice breaking, heart pounding. You're not him. You're not my son. The weight of dread pressed against her ribcage, a vice tightening as she pushed against the invading shadows. Jake's gaze dimmed for a heartbeat, as if something flickered behind the vacant void. Mom, please. A shadow flickered past his face, a fleeting glimpse of a childish form dissolving into the dark once more. And then, without warning, the ground beneath her began to shudder, the house groaning as if it were awakening from a deep slumber. Rachel stumbled back, her instincts pushing her toward the opposite wall, searching for balance amidst the chaos. The door swung wider, inviting her into a vortex of nightmare. The laughter grew more manic, a honeyed poison seeping into her consciousness. Suddenly, an idea struck her, a sliver of hope in an otherwise suffocating darkness. Jake! She shouted, gripping the air between them like a lifeline. Remember when we built the fort in the living room? How we said we'd always be safe as long as we were together. She felt a spark of clarity, holding onto it tightly. We're stronger together, remember? For a fleeting moment, she saw an acknowledgement in his glassy eyes. A flicker of something genuine, a dim light breaking through the consuming shadows. But that spark quickly extinguished as the dark laughter quelled her words, drowning them in glee. No, they're waiting. Jake lunged for the threshold, the shadows wrapping tightly around him like a cage. We have to join them. Rachel sprang forward, arms stretched towards her son as the pull of the doorway clawed at her heels. No! She screamed, adrenaline surging. She felt the shadows pulse around her, a living entity grasping to pull her down. But she reached out, and for the first time, Jake hesitated, his body trembling between worlds. Please, Mom. His voice cracked, an echo of the boy she recognized. The darkness shifted, swirling and forming figures, each resembling children with twisted smiles. They danced grotesquely, their bodies writhing as they beckoned Jake closer. Rachel's heart raced as the horrific visions danced around her, drowning out her voice and reason. Together, she shouted, grasping every ounce of love she had left. We can fight them, Jake. I won't let them take you. The shadows hissed, their voices rising in a frenzy, drowning her out until everything was a surreal blur of panic and terror. Then, in one horrifying moment, one of the figures lunged forward, its hollow eyes filled with voids of despair. Rachel felt her own heart racing, the darkness brushing against her skin, filling her mind with the whispers of lost souls. Each pulse pulled at her spirit, making her feel lighter, like she could simply drift away into their embrace. Help me, Jake! With her last ounce of strength, she threw herself towards him. The world around her spun, a cyclone of chaos and desperation. It was now or never. But as her fingers reached for his, the shadows ripped through the air, embracing him, completely in their dark fold. Jake screamed, a gut-wrenching sound echoing through the abyss. And just like that, the connection shattered, leaving Rachel alone in a house flooded with horrors, desperation clawing at her sanity. There was only one terrible realization left. The abyss was no longer calling for Jake alone. It was reaching for her, too. Time stopped as she was pulled deeper, her heart pounding furiously. What awaited them both as the darkness closed in, hungrily awaiting its new playthings. Would she succumb to the nightmarish embrace or find the strength to resist before it consumed her whole? The shadows lunged at Rachel, relentless and clawing, whispering her name in a chorus of despair. The air thickened like molasses, each breath a struggle as the darkness tightened around her. She staggered back, fighting against the invisible chains pulling her towards the door where Jake had vanished. "Mommy!" His voice echoed, weak and terrified, mixing with the serrated giggles of the sinister figures that danced just out of reach. The walls seemed to pulse. The very house throbbed with something alive and malevolent. Rachel felt her sanity fraying at the edges, a delicate thread in a tempest of chaos. She gritted her teeth, summoning every ounce of her will, unwilling to fall into madness. "Stay back," she barked, voice hoarse and trembling as she wrestled with the shadows that loomed over her. In that moment, she recalled another time, another place. She had always held Jake's hand in the dark, a strong anchor when the shadows threatened to overwhelm. "We can fight this," she shouted, hoping to harness the bond they shared, to tear through the veil of darkness. "Join us," Rachel rasped a voice, curling around her like smoke. It was sweet with the promise of relief, but under it lay hunger and unquenchable thirst for souls. She shook her head vehemently, stepping forward, determination igniting a flicker of warmth in her chilled veins. "Jake!" she screamed, forcing the name into the blackness, a beacon of hope. "I'm coming!" But the shadows hissed, echoing distorted laughter that surged and fell like waves crashing against her frail resolve. Rachel turned, seeking another way. The walls were closing in. She spotted the staircase cloaked in darkness, an upward path she had never considered. With trepidation bubbling like a live wire, she made her way to the creaking steps, the air growing colder with every step. "Help me!" A faint whisper danced with the shadows, but it was nothing like Jake's. This was a taunt, a temptation laced with poison. Her heart thudded, each beat a reminder of the last connection she had with her son. As she climbed, splinters of light began to pierce the gloom, flickering like dying stars. She darted up the staircase, determined to find the source, each step echoing in the empty silence that wrapped around her. And then she halted. A door loomed at the top, slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the dark. She reached for the handle, her fingers trembling. Was there safety beyond that door? Or was it another trap? Suddenly, the laughter erupted again, more manic than before. A chorus of taunts mixed with cries of children lost. It shook through her, battering her resolve. "No!" Rachel shouted and thrust the door wide open. Her breath hitched, the sight before her unraveling her mind. A room filled with toys, vibrant and cheerful against the oppressive blackness. Yet it felt wrong, too vibrant, too inviting. Her eyes darted to the walls, cloaked in handwritten messages scrawled in childish handwriting. Each one a plea, a warning. "Don't play with them. They lie. They take you." Her heart sank into her stomach. The words wrapped around her like chains, the laughter morphing into wailing, resonating as anguish clawed at her insides. She turned back, ready to flee, but the door slammed shut, sealing her in with the darkness. The laughter faded, replaced by Jake's small voice, now echoing just outside the door. "Mom! Help me!" Rachel pressed her hands against the door, panic spiraling within her. She was trapped in a room filled with nightmares. What had she awakened? How long would she stay hidden from the very shadows that were now creeping closer, wrapping her in their sinister embrace? Each tick of the clock in the corner felt like a countdown to her doom, and she realized with a chilling clarity, she was not the only one lost in this web of terror. What awaited her if she chose to open that door again? Would it be her son or the dark carnival of whispers that had stolen him away? Rachel's heart raced, a wild drumbeat against her ribcage, as claustrophobia gripped her tighter than the shadows whispering around. The room felt alive, as if the toys themselves watched her with predatory glee. She stepped back, a cold sweat trickling down her spine, and the laughter ignited once again, swirling like a maelstrom of despair. "Jake?" she whispered, desperation lacing her words. No response, just the echoes of the zany giggles that twisted and turned in her ears, mocking her. She spun around. The walls felt like they were closing in, painted grief swirling in the air. The cheerful toys seemed to come alive, their eyes glinting with malevolence. Rachel choked on a scream, spinning to face the door, but it held a chilling permanence. She was ensnared. "Don't play with them," the childish warnings scrawled against the walls punctured her heart. She grabbed a stuffed bear, soft and worn, a relic of innocence. Holding it close, she felt the small comfort seep into her. But it didn't last long. The walls pulsed, a grotesque heartbeat that echoed in time with her mounting panic. "Help me," it was Jake's voice again, like a sweet lure amidst the horror. "Mommy, please." It shifted, grew more desperate. Rachel's mind screamed to her, clawing at logic. Was he truly out there, or was this another trick? The whisper faded, replaced by the chorus of laughter, and something snapped inside her. "Enough!" she roared, hurling the bear across the room. It collided with a dollhouse, the sound cutting through the laughter like a knife. She felt the intensity rise, the room vibrating with rage, and all at once, the shadows surged forward. Rachel bolted to the door. She pressed her palm flat against the wood, feeling the cold seep into her flesh. "I will not let you take me from him," she shouted, a spark of defiance igniting in her chest. "Open, damn you!" But the door remained stubbornly shut, mocking her with its silence. A loud crack rang in the air. The laughter faded to an eerie hush, leaving her heart pounding in the aftermath. She glanced back at the room. A sudden stillness suffocated the vibrancy. The toys now lay unnaturally quiet, their whimsical essence morphed into something sinister. Then she saw a flicker of movement in the corner, a small shadow, no larger than a child. Rachel squinted into the dark corner where a doll lay, its porcelain face cracked and smeared with dirt, and it smiled, showing teeth too sharp for comfort. "Don't you want to play?" It beckoned, voice as sweet as candy yet twisted with menace. Rachel staggered back, blood rushing to her head. No. I just need to find Jake." With a newfound ferocity, she turned back to the door. She pounded against it, splintering the silence with her resolve. "Open. I demand it." Behind her, the sinister laughter returned, rising in pitch and mockery. The walls rumbled, a chaotic response to her defiance. The whispers grew louder, surrounding her in a cacophony of despair. "Let us play a game." The words slithered around her, thickening the air. It wasn't a question. It was a command. In that moment, Rachel felt a chill settle in her bones, a realization dawning like a slow tide. She might have awakened something far darker than she anticipated. The door rattled violently, and the dim light flickered as if the house itself breathed its last. She pressed her ear to the door, feeling the weight of the world outside pressing back. Would she find Jake there, or had he been swallowed whole by the darkness? As the shadows crept closer, a dreadful choice loomed before her. Would she dare open the door? Would it lead to Jake's cries or to the heart of the nightmare? A burst of laughter erupted alongside a low growl, chilling her to the core. "Time's almost up." Rachel, what was waiting on the other side? Was it her son or the very darkness that craved her soul? Rachel's hand trembled as she pressed her palm against the door, the peeling paint slick beneath her fingertips. She could feel the pulse of the house around her, strong and insistent, as though it was alive, waiting with bated breath. The laughter faded, replaced by a taut silence that throbbed in her ears. "Jake?" she called again, her voice wavering, both a plea and a challenge. The shadows whispered behind her, thick and oppressive. She felt them thickening, breathing in tandem with her fear, stalking her like a predator in the dark. "Mommy," the voice was faint now, barely more than a ghostly echo, pulling at her heartstrings. Rachel's breath quickened, each inhale a frantic gasp as she fought to remain grounded. The door, steadfast and unyielding, offered no solace. She spun back to the room, her eyes wild in the dim light, searching for Jake's face among the terrifying toys. The doll in the corner had moved, or maybe it was just her imagination. She couldn't be sure. It sat there, its cracked porcelain smile wider, sharper. The unholy glee in its bright eyes pierced through the veil of fear. Play with us, Rachel, it sang, its voice a calliope of horror. The other toys shifted, creaking into life, their laughter morphing into a sinister symphony that echoed the chaos in her mind. Get away from me, she screamed, the words tearing from her throat like she was shedding skin. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, she turned back to the door. Her fist clenched. She slammed her palm against the wood, shouting, "You will not keep my son from me." If the door had ever held a secret, it thrummed like a string pulled tight, vibrating with her determination. But it yielded nothing. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, before it cracked under the weight of her desperation. She could feel the shadows circling her ankles like hungry wolves, each creeping closer with a palpable hunger. Then she felt it a brush against her leg, cold and light, like the caress of 1,000 unseen fingers. A surge of panic clenched her gut. Rachel kicked out, her foot connecting with something soft, and the laughter dissolved into an angry roar. Time to play. The command loomed heavy in the air, a smothering blanket that smothered her hope. The shadows shrieked with delight, a cacophony that stung her ears, drowning out her thoughts. Rachel's heart thundered as she raced through memories of warmer days, of sunshine and laughter, desperately holding on to anything that reminded her of Jake. Suddenly, the doll sprang to life, its porcelain joints cracking like thunder. It lunged toward her, sharp teeth bared. Rachel shrieked, half in fear, half in rage, and grabbed the closest toy, a wooden soldier, now expanding with the strength of her will. She threw it like a missile, smashing it against the doll. It crumbled, its laughter silenced. But a new sound emerged, a low, guttural growl that rumbled from the shadows. Rachel's hands shook. Was it pain or loss? The boundaries blurred in her heart as she sensed the darkness sharpening, focusing on her. No, she gasped, aware now that she had sparked a rage she might not contain. It felt like they were coming for her, hundreds of tiny voices weaving through the dark, growing louder, drowning her resolve. Make a choice, the doll's voice echoed, somehow more sinister than before. Rachel could feel her grasp on reality slipping, shadows stretching from the corners to snare her. She could fight or she could embrace the darkness. The door shuddered one last time, producing a tiny crack that glinted with the faintest sliver of light. The promise of freedom hung just out of reach. "Jake!" she cried, feeling a surge of both dread and defiance. Would she open the door, risk the unknown, and face whatever lay outside? Or could she conquer the darkness that threatened to swallow her whole? The shadows closed in, their malevolent laughter echoing as they whispered, "Choose wisely." What choice would she make in this battle for her son's soul? Would she face the lurking dread, or would she succumb to the very darkness craving her? Despair? Rachel's heart raced as she stood there, the shadows clutching her tighter. The choice lay heavy in the air, electrifying her senses. Beyond the door, the world waited like a predator, sharp teeth glinting in the fractured light that spilled through the crack. "Choose," the doll's voice echoed, menacing and taunting, as the shadows writhed and twitched, pulsating with energy. Behind this door, freedom lurked, but she could feel the dark tendrils pulling at her, eager to grip her soul just a little tighter. "Jake!" she shouted again, her voice trembling. The sound ricocheted against the walls of the house, swallowed by the hungry shadows. She could almost feel Jake's presence out there, laced with fear. Each grim breath twisted her insides. What if he was out there? What if he needed her? She couldn't leave him. But then the toys creaked and shifted again, their laughter mocking, a reminder that danger thrummed beneath the surface. That horrible, spiraling laughter, a beckoning invitation into a twisted carnival of horrors that would drown her fight. "Join us," they sang, gathering in a wild dance around her, malicious glee smearing their features. It felt like a sick game designed to break her down, unravel her sanity thread by thread. Stubborn defiance rose within Rachel. She couldn't be cowed. With every ounce of determination, she pushed the fear aside, her mind sharp and clear. The door shimmered with the promise of light, of escape from this nightmare. She stepped forward, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She flung her weight into the door, heart pounding wildly. The wood trembled beneath her palms as she shouted, "I am not afraid of you." The door burst open, and she stumbled through the threshold, gasping with fear and hope. Light flooded her senses, a stark contrast to the thick darkness behind her, but it revealed nothing but an empty hallway stretching into a void. Simple wallpaper hung askew, the air stale but not reeking of malice. Nevertheless, she felt an encroaching weight behind her, like the walls themselves were shifting to keep her trapped. "Mommy?" A soft voice, distorted and raw, echoed from the end of the hallway. It sent a chill crawling down her spine. "Jake?" Rachel spun on her heels, heart racing, fighting against the exhaustion pulling at her limbs. "Jake!" she cried, surging forward. But the more she ran, the further the voice drifted away. Panic seized her again as she realized it was leading her deeper into the house, deeper into the labyrinth where the shadows were richer, darker, thicker. Suddenly, the laughter erupted again, a cacophony of sinister giggles spiraling from the very walls. Surrounded her, suffocating and malicious. "Play with us, Rachel," they screeched, and she could feel them tightening around her, swirling, and snaring her spirit. She faltered, breath ragged, tasting the bitter tang of despair. "You want to take him. I choose him," she screamed, forcing the words through trembling lips. But the house laughed back, drowning her resolve. "Yes, not here, Rachel. He belongs to us now." That voice so familiar, laced with deceit, rippled through her mind, pulling her deeper into the haunting silence. Her heart plunged. It wasn't just a game. It was a hunt, a twisted game with dire stakes. With every step, shadows clawed at her ankles, the walls closing in with suffocating intent. She had to find Jake. But where was he? Was he truly in danger? She screamed his name again, fear uncoiling in her stomach, echoing through the hall as she felt the darkness tightening like a noose. "Mommy, help me!" That voice stirred something within her, a glimmer of hope against the darkness trying to consume her. Would she stand her ground? Or would she spiral into the very abyss that yearned for her despair? "Choose the house," whispered, anticipation crackling in the air. The darkness laughed, and Rachel knew the game was far from over. Somewhere, somehow, she would have to confront the terrible truth hidden in the shadows, not just for her son, but for her own soul. What would she uncover next in this battle of light and dark? Rachel stumbled onto the cracked wooden floor, the echo of her footsteps swallowed by a thick silence. The overwhelming feeling of having stepped into another realm tightened around her chest. The walls loomed, painted in muted colors that barely held their cheer, decorated with peeling images of joy that seemed to mock her misery. "Jake!" she shouted again, desperate, her voice trembling. But the stillness was unyielding. Rachel pressed onward, her feet quickening with urgency. Each corridor she entered seemed to twist, pulling her deeper into an abyss of unanswered questions and darkened memories. From a corner, a creak resounded. Rachel wheeled around, body rigid, heart hammering in her ears. A door on her right, partly ajar, beckoned her once more. Inside, the faint smell of childhood old crayons and faded toys hung in the stale air. She pushed the door open, the hinges protesting as they squeaked. The room revealed a ghostly nursery, rays of moonlight filtering through a grimy window, cobwebs strung across the corners, speaking of abandonment. In the far corner stood a crib, darkened shadows drifting around it. Figures loomed just beyond her vision, silent yet threatening. The sight struck her like an icy fist. "Jake?" There was a sudden chill in her voice, laced with a creeping dread that coursed through her veins. A soft giggle, airy and cruel, danced around her. "Mommy, come play." Rachel's breath caught. She stepped forward, trembling, peering into the crib, expecting to find her son. But it was empty, just a thin layer of dust covering the bottom. The giggle echoed again, morphing into a malicious laughter that ricocheted off the walls, infecting the air with its viciousness. "Stop it," she shouted, clenching her fists, as anger rose within her. The memory of Jake filled her with resolve. "I will find you. Turning abruptly, she decided to race back into the suffocating hallway. Shadows pooled at her feet, whispering words of torment, urging her to turn back. The laughter grew louder, otherworldly in its cadence. It clawed at her sanity, drawing out her fears and twisting them into grotesque shapes. Rachel pressed on, each step feeling like wading through thick fog. She could almost feel Jake's presence slipping away, binding her heart with dread. The house shifted around her. Every step felt destined to lead her to the very edge of hopelessness. "Mommy!" His voice again so close, yet obscured by layers of darkness. She stumbled forward, the walls morphing into blackened forms, stretching and twisting into nightmarish shapes. Shadows darted like fireflies around her, whispering secrets that stabbed at her psyche. "Leave now, it's not safe," they hissed, the atmosphere thickening with a deadly urgency. But she couldn't leave. Not until she found him. Then, just before her, a door loomed at the end of the hall, a darker frame hanging in that frail light. Something shifted within her, pulling her towards it like a moth to a flame. As she approached, a weight fell upon her. It was heavier than before, richer with despair. Would it grant her passage to Jake? Or a fall into deeper darkness? The knob felt cold beneath her palm like the grip of a forgotten specter, urging her to turn. "Open it," the voices echoed, distant yet intimate, wrapping around her like chains. Discover the truth with every heart thud. She wrestled her fear, twisting the knob, surrendering to the unknown. The door creaked open, revealing an abyss that beckoned her into uncharted depths. What awaited her on the other side? Would it be salvation or the darkest of horrors? Time stood still, as Rachel faced the yawning void. Knowing she had no choice but to step through, Rachel stepped through the doorway, clutching her breath like a fragile thread. The air was thick and musty, swirling around her like remnants of lost souls. She entered a space that felt like the heart of the house itself, a cellar, drenched in darkness and echoing with sounds that sent shivers running along her spine. The dim light flickered, revealing cobwebs and mold, shadows leaping across the walls, whispering secrets so sinister they sent ice rushing through her veins. "Jake!" she called again, voice breaking, desperation clawing at her throat. "Where are you?" The shadows hesitated, as if startled by the name. Silence hung heavy, suffocating. Her heart raced, fueled by a relentless instinct to push forward. She had to find him. She remembered his laughter, the sweet sound of his joy. It lit a fire in her, urging her deeper into the murk. Suddenly, the echo of a child's giggle pierced through the gloom. Liquid with malice, it wrapped around her ears, pulling her toward a far corner of the room where old trunks sat, their clasps rusted with age. She edged closer, the laughter shifting to a chorus of hisses. "Mommy, come play," fighting the urge to flee. Rachel knelt beside the trunks, prying one open with a trembling hand. Inside lay a jumble of dusty toys, their once cheerful faces now warped and sinister. Atop the heap lay a faded picture with the outlines of children lost in gleeful abandon. Grief washed over her, threatening to drown her hope. "Show yourself," she cried, fury surging through her veins. "I will find him." Then, the giggles transformed, swirling into cackles that filled the air with frantic energy. The shadows contorted as if delighted by her desperation. Rachel slammed the lid shut, breathing heavily, and spun around. "Okay, you want a game?" she said defiantly, her voice rising above the cacophony. "Let us play." In that moment, something shifted. The lights flickered wildly, casting her own defiance back at her. "Not just you," a whisper licked at her ear, "but the heart of this game." Before she could react, the ground shifted, and the cellar trembled beneath her feet. The specters of children danced in the dim glow, forming shapes that mimicked each step she took. This wasn't a game of hide and seek. It was a battle for souls, hers and Jake's. She could feel the otherworldly presence at her back. "I'd rather lose than let you have him," she shouted, channeling every ounce of courage in her. And then she felt his presence so close that she could almost reach out and touch it, warmth cutting through the cold of despair. I'm coming, Jake. With sheer willpower, she raced down a passageway of darkness, shadows clawing at her. Then a door. It boomed ominously, but there was a light escaping through the cracks. She could almost hear Jake's voice, "Mommy." Desperation fueled her, and she flung it open, bursting into a bright room. "What are you doing?" Jake stared at her, the child she knew, standing surrounded by the broken remnants of haunted toys. His expression was vacant, and that chasm in his eyes echoed the darkness. "I'm here," she breathed, rushing to him. "I'll protect you. Mama's here." But as she reached for him, the shadows swirled faster, wrapping around Jake like tendrils of smoke, pulling him backward. Rachel screamed against the suffocating pull. "No, not my son." She tore through the haze, feeling the darkness clawing at her skin. "Join us," whispered the shadows, thick as betrayal in their seductive tones. "No, I choose him," Rachel screamed, tears streaming down her cheeks. In that moment of raw defiance, she launched herself at Jake. Their hands clasped together tightly, and she felt warmth radiate from him, a flicker of the love that transcended both time and space. The shadows recoiled as their connection solidified, flickering like a candle against the storm. An explosion of light erupted from them, illuminating the darkness, shattering the malevolence that had tried to consume them both. "Run!" she shouted, and they ran together through the crackling light, navigating a maze of shadows unraveling behind them. They dashed toward the exit, the room behind collapsing into itself, shadows screaming and writhing as if they were tearing apart, clawing against the light. Finally, they burst through the threshold and into the warm, golden sunlight of the beach outside. They fell to the soft sand, breathing in the salty air, the cool touch of reality grounding them. Jake looked up at Rachel, wide-eyed and innocent. "Mom, is it over?" For a moment, Rachel held her breath, the echoes of the past fading like a nightmare slipping beneath the waves. She nodded, tears flowing down her cheeks. "Yes, my love, it's over. We can go home." As they embraced, the sun began to set over the ocean, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. The shadows lingered just beyond the shoreline, a distant memory fading into the horizon, a reminder of lessons learned and battles fought. But that was a chapter closed. Looking down at Jake, his laughter ringing like music, Rachel took his hand, ready to step into a future free of haunted memories. Together, they would replace their fears with brighter tomorrows. The beach house sat quiet now, shadows retreating from the light, a haunting, sunken past that had finally been put to rest. And with that, their new journey began. Don't end your adventure here. You need to subscribe now to catch all the exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your thoughts on this wild finish. Your theories matter. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who also need to experience this thrilling conclusion. Show your support and let's make this community stronger together.